Hello, bruv. Bruvs, can you hear me, bruvs? Today we're looking back at a book called Looking Backward, 2000 to 1887 by Edward Bellamy. Very interesting that it has books and stationery from J. F. Wallach in London, Ontario. You can see the old bookmark, bruv. If it would go into focus, you would really see it. Owned by M.D. Campbell, 200 John Street, London, Ontario. It was a birthday present for Flossie from M.D. Campbell. Book is copywritten in 1889 by Tickner and Company, and I believe this is Grosset and Dunlap. Yeah, there he is, Edward Bellamy. I believe Bellamy died, 2 years later? Didn't live long because he had tuberculosis. He was, I believe, lived in Boston, which is where the story takes place, bruv. No, I think he died in 1898. Getting my dates mixed up. Anyway, the book was a story of time travel. The author of Looking Backwards, the great poet's lines express Edward Bellamy's aim in writing his famous book. That aim would realize in our country's daily being the great declaration that gave us national existence. For some context, bruv, Bellamy believed in nationalizing all property, and instead of calling it socialism, they called it nationalism. So I'm assuming that's what they're talking about when they speak of national existence. Great declaration that gave us national existence would, in equality of opportunity, give man his own earth to stand on, and thereby the race for the first time enabled to enter unhampered upon the use of its God-given possibilities, achieve a progress unexampled and marvelous. It is now 12 years since the writing of Looking Backward. So what would that make it, bruv? 1900. It's now 12 years since the writing of Looking Backward changed one of the most brilliant of the younger American authors into an impassioned social reformer whose work was destined to have momentous effect upon the movement of his age. His quality had hitherto been manifest in romances like Dr. Heidenhoff's Process and Miss Luddington's Sister. That's what he was writing before. Pardon while I clear my nose. Coffee and coldness, bruv, after 80-degree weather. Anyway, the story takes place where Julian West, no relation to Adam West, he puts himself, or somebody puts him into a hypnosis sleep, and he wakes up 113 years, and voila, modern day Boston, Mass, is a socialist utopia in 2000. And he wasn't wrong. The whole entirety of the country of the U.S. America was turned into this same socialist utopia. And it looks like the rest of the book concerns his thoughts on this rapid socialization of national industry into an industrial army. That must be a tremendous saving of handling, I said. But our system, the manufacturer is sold to the wholesaler to the realtor, and the retailer to the consumer, and the good The goods had to be handled each time. You avoid one handling of the goods and eliminate the retailer altogether with his big profit and the army of clerks it goes to support. Why, Miss Leet, this store is merely the order department of a wholesale house, with no more than a wholesaler's complement of clerks. Under our system of handling the goods, persuading the customers to buy them, cutting them off, and packing them, 10 clerks would not do what one does. The saving must be enormous. I suppose so, said Edith. But of course we have never known any other way. But, Mr. West, you must not fail to ask Father to take you to the central warehouse some day, where they receive the orders from the different sample houses all over the city, and parcel out and send the goods to their destination. He took me there not long ago, and it was a wonderful sight. The system is certainly perfect. For example, over yonder in that sort of cage in the dispatching clerk. The orders are there taken by the different departments in the store are sent by transmitters to him. Mitters. His assistants sort them and enclose each class in a carrier box by itself. The dispatching clerk has a dozen pneumatic transmitters. Mitters before his answering to the general classes of goods, each communicating with the corresponding department at the warehouse. So you see, bruv, it's not very exciting. Let's see what else happens. I'm just looking at Wikipedia because I'm not going to bother to read this. Although Bellamy's novel did not discuss technology or the economy in detail, commentators frequently Whoa, that was a good one. Shook my arm. Ah, shit. Julian West is taken to a store which... Oh, no, here it comes. It's that coffee effect, buddy. Oh, no. Now we're in landscape. Oh, I must be allergic to coffee. Bellamy's ideas somewhat reflect classical Marxism. In chapter 19, for example, he has the new legal system explained. There's chapter 13, bruv. See if we can get to 19. XVII. That's 18, right? Let's see what he explains here. In the course of an earlier morning constitutional, I visited Charlestown. Among the changes, too numerous to attempt to indicate, which marked the lapse of a century in that quarter, I particularly noted the total disappearance of the old state prison. Hey, defund the police, Bubba. That went before my day, but I remember hearing about it, said Dr. Leet, when I alluded to the fact that the breakfast table, we have no jails nowadays. All cases of atavism are treated in the hospitals. Of atavism, I exclaimed, staring. Why, yes, replied Dr. Leet. The idea of dealing punitively with those unfortunate was given up at least 50 years ago, and I think more. I don't quite understand you, I said. Atavism in my day was a word applied to the cases of persons in whom some trait of a remote ancestor recurred in a noticeable manner. Am I to understand that crime is nowadays looked upon as the recurrence of an ancestral trait? I beg your pardon, said Dr. Leet, with a smile half humorous, half deprecating. But since you have so explicitly asked the question, I am forced to say that the fact is precisely that. After what I had already learned of the moral contrast between the 19th and the 20th centuries, it was doubtless absurd in me to begin to develop sensitiveness on the subject, and probably if Dr. Leet had not spoken with that apologetic air, and Mrs. Leet and Edith shown a corresponding embarrassment, I should not have blushed, as I was conscious I did. I was not in much danger of being vain of my generation before, I said. But really, this is your generation, Mr. West, interposed Edith. It is the one in which you are living, you know, and it is only because we are alive now that we call it ours. What? Thank you. I will try to think of it so, I said, and as my eyes met hers, their expression quite cured my senseless sensitiveness. After all, I said with a laugh, I was brought up a Calvinist and ought not to be startled to hear crime spoken of as an ancestral trait. That's hilarious, bruv. In point of fact, said Dr. Leet, our use of the word is no reflection at all on your generation. If, begging Edith's pardon, we may call it yours, so far as seeming to imply that we think ourselves, apart from our circumstances, better than you were. In your day, fully 19/20ths of the crime, using the word broadly to include all sorts of misdemeanors, resulted from the inequality in the possessions of individuals. Want tempted the poor, lust of greater gains, or the desire to preserve former gains, tempted the well-to-do, directly or indirectly, desire for money, which they meant every good thing, was the motive of all this crime, the taproot of a vast poison growth, which the machinery of law, courts, and police could barely prevent from choking your civilization outright. When we made the nation the sole trustee of the wealth of all of the people and guaranteed to all abundant maintenance, on the one hand abolishing want and on the other checking the accumulation of riches, we cut this root and the poison tree that overshadowed your society with it. This is funny. This is like a joke, Polish joke book. Like Jonah's gourd in a day. As for the comparatively small class of violent crimes against persons unconnected with any idea of gain, they were almost wholly confined. Listen, bruv, as we see in our modern society, the more that is given, the higher the violent rate is. Not so much in other countries, and I will say the one reason probably is because we have armaments, and thus we haven't accepted the steel belted tire and the television, as the one guy said on network, whatever that program was, that movie. Yeah, so we still have a violent element left in us because we're not complete sheep, and the sheep that we have mad sheep's disease, like mad cow and man cow. Anyway, bruv, let's see what else this is. Bellamy's ideas somewhat reflect classical Marxism. We already read that. Decades of the 1870s and 80s were marked by economic and social turmoil, including the Long Depression. Edward Bellamy, a relatively unknown New England-born novelist with a history of concern with social issues, began to conceive of writing an impactful work of visionary fiction, shaping the outlines of a utopian future. Bellamy's book, gradually planned throughout the 1880s, was completed in 1887 and taken to Boston publisher Benjamin Ticknor, who published the first edition of the novel in January 1888. Initial sales of the book were modest and uninspiring, but the book did find a readership in the Boston area, including enthusiastic reviews by future Bellamites. Oh, that's right, they did form little groups that he had like groupies that formed in different cities. Let's see if I can find something about that. The Bellamy Library of Fact and Fiction by William Reeves, a radical London publisher, printer, and bookseller, was a systematic effort to organize this literature. It sold 235,000 copies in England. Shocking. 532,000 in the U.S. by the middle of 1939. Let's see if I can find this about the success of Looking Backwards provoked a spate of sequels, parodies, satires, dystopian and anti-utopian responses. A partial list of these follows. The result was a battle of books that lasted throughout the rest of the 19th century. The back and forth nature of the debate is illustrated by the subtitle of Geisler's 1891 Looking Back Beyond, which is a sequel to Looking Backward by Edward Bellamy, and an answer to Looking Forward by Richard McCallis. Where did I see that there was... Let me see if I can find this movement that formed from the book. Nationalist clubs. Backward, Bellamy's vision of a harmonious future world inspired the formation of numerous nationalist clubs dedicated to the propagation of his political ideas. Yeah, they were calling it nationalism, bruv. An irascible moralist, he transcended the apparent limitations of his origins to become a popular author. The nationalist clubs. I want to know about those clubs, buddy. Buddy! Let's see what his nationalist clubs were called. I think they were just nationalist clubs. Bellamy clubs were established all over the United States for discussing and propagating the book's ideas. His ideas were also well received in Europe. Alfred Salter, a member of the Labour Party in Britain, read the book as a young man, and along with his wife, Ada Salter, attempted to build Bellamy's Utopia. What? In Bermondsey. Bellamy's book also inspired the Garden City movement, as Stanley Booter, the author of Visionaries and Planners, the Garden City movement, and the Modern Community, has pointed out. Bellamy also envisioned an environmental setting suitable for his new social order. His Boston of the year 2000 is a small city of park-like appearance, neat, unostentatious homes filled with conveniences face broad, tree-lined boulevards. What kind of sentence is that? Conveniently located public laundries and central dining halls relive the drudgery of housework and end the isolation of domestic life. Dominating the city are handsome and commodious public buildings of classical architecture and gleaming whiteness which provide the center of community life. Needless to say, slums, saloons, and excitement of crowds or the enticement of loitering before shop windows has been eliminated. An efficient, order-like life is what Bellamy's future promised. The author ingeniously combined state control in matters of production and distribution with private initiative in the arts to project what he regarded as a truly satisfying and liberal society. Loving liberal society. I am Edward Bellamy, bruv. Here are your friends, said Edith. Looks fairly unappealing. I mean, this guy looks like Ringo Starr, let's be honest. With a big, fat fucking beard. Is that a snake? Around a stalk of broccoli? Is that a broccoli floret, buddy? Yeah. So that's all you need to know about this book. You can carry on with your life now. Cheerio, Rob!